So one day, I saw this mobile game ad for a puzzle game that used water physics, and I was like, you know what, might as well try this out. But when I installed the game, it was another Candy Crush knockoff. Like, what kind of marketing team thinks of that? Who in the right mind would think that this strategy would work and lead to downloads? So I imagine their marketing team to be something like this. Alright guys, who has an idea of how we should market our Candy Crush knockoff? What if we made an actually good game and marketed it so people would actually play it? Anyone have any actual ideas? What if we made an ad of the game, but the player just sucks at the game? Better, but not good enough. Now whose idea is next? What if we make an ad of a completely different puzzle game? So people will download it, but when they do, it'll just be another Candy Crush knockoff. Absolutely perfect. You're promoted. You see, these are the kind of ideas we need. Everyone else, you're fired. So because of that, I decided to actually make the water physics puzzle game. So make sure to watch all the way till the end of the video so you can see how the game turns out and so you can finally play the game in those fake mobile game ads. Now before we begin, I decided to make this even harder because it obviously wasn't hard enough already. I decided to join the Thinky Puzzle Game Jam. This game jam is about making a puzzle game, which is exactly what I'm doing. So this fits perfectly. But this adds the time constraint of finishing the game within a week. Every game jam has a theme. So let's hope this one's easy to add my game. And the theme is extreme sports. And at that moment, I knew I was not just cooked. I was deep fried. Until I read that the theme was optional. Since now that we're not screwed anymore, let's actually start making the game. My idea for the game is that there's going to be a goblin that you want to help reach his goal. This goblin is going to be a ragdoll, so you can pull the pins to release water that pushes the goblin around. Just like in the mobile game ad. The pins are the main way for the player to interact with the game, so I decided to add those first. But this obviously wasn't hard enough yet, so I decided to make this game in vector art, which is an art type I've never done for a game before. Finally, on top of all that, this is the second game I've ever made in the Godot game engine, because before this, I used Unity. So now, we're basically running this game challenge in ultra hardcore mode. I mean, nothing could ever go wrong with this plan. After a few minutes of drawing, I got this pin. And honestly, this pin's way better than the one in the ad. Since we now have the pin, the next thing we're gonna make is the goblin. Because we want the goblin to be a ragdoll, we have to draw each body part separately. So I first started with the head, then drew the body, the arms, and the legs. And then we ended up with a good looking goblin. Now that we have the main pieces of art, we can hop into Godot. First thing I did in Godot was put the goblin ragdoll together. Next, I borrowed some water that used physics. I would never steal someone else's code. Since we had the ragdoll water, it was time to add the pins. And after a few seconds, we got the pins working. In this game, the goblin's trying to get to his goal, so we obviously need to add a chest. I drew it and threw it into the game. I still hadn't decided whether or not the chest should have physics, so I just left that for future me. Getting the basics done, it was time to spruce up the game environment. I wanted this game to be in a dungeon themed, so the first thing I added was torches. I made some art for the torch, and then I made the fire particle effect for it. It definitely didn't take me more than an hour to get the particle effect to look good. And there we go, we now have a torch. The second way I spruced up the game was by adding post-processing in Bloom. Then, I threw together the first level, and there it is. The first level was super simple, and it was made to teach the player the game. The other levels are going to be a lot harder to make, and my goal is to have at least 10 levels for the game. I mean, it can't be that hard, right? Now, it was time to begin level design. This will be the most time-consuming part of the project, so let's see how much time we have left. And we only got 2 days left. So essentially, it's time to speedrun. The first 3 levels were pretty easy to make, but when I got to the 4th level, I realized that there's no way for the goblin to go up. The water only could push him down. So, we needed an idea to fix this. Alright, how are we gonna make this goblin move up? Anyone have any ideas?
What if we gave the goblin Red Bull so it got wings and could fly?
Anyone have a better idea? What if we added a bounce pad? These are all terrible ideas. Since none of you idiots could come up with an actual idea, we're gonna have to add a bounce pad, which was my completely original idea. It'll work perfectly with the game and will be simple to add. Hey, that's what I said. Adding a bounce pad would be a great way for the goblin to move up. It also makes the game more fun and goofy. Just look at this guy bounce. It also adds a funny way for the goblin to bounce to his death. After adding the bounce pad, level design became much easier. And I also decided to add physics to the chest in the later levels so it could bounce on the bounce pad, making the level more interesting. Since we now had some levels, it was time to make the main menu. I decided the main menu needed some art, so I made this absolute masterpiece where the goblin is opening his chest of gold. Like, I absolutely cooked when making this. Probably the best vector art I've made so far. And make sure you let me know in the comments how good you think this piece of art is. Since we now have the main menu completed, it was time for the level select screen. Now I just made a super simple level select screen where it was just the numbers of the levels. Now finally, we needed a tutorial. I was originally planning to have an interactive tutorial, but I was running out of time, so I just made a simple scene with the instructions. We currently only have 5 levels, and after making the 6th and 7th level, we almost had 0 time left. Because of this, the 8th and 9th levels were hastily thrown together. I only got to make 9 levels, but I was still super happy with the game. But right when I was about to export the game, I realized I forgot something. Sound effects. Since I literally only had 10 minutes left, I only had time to add a few sound effects. Now with the sound effects, the game was complete, and I was able to submit the game on time. There were a lot of cool submissions to the jam, and I was glad to have made a game for it. And considering this was my first puzzle game, I was pretty proud of it. If you want to play the game, the link to the game is in the description. I would not recommend playing the web version, because the water physics makes it super laggy and basically unplayable. I would highly recommend downloading it. It runs a lot better with higher quality graphics, even on lower end devices. Let me know in the comments what you would like to see added to the game, and if you could beat all the levels. Make sure to subscribe if you want to see more games and animations. I'll see you next video.